Well, hello again from here inside the City ground, where it's a damn sight quieter than it was an hour ago when Newcastle supporters were celebrating that penalty shootout victory just over my shoulder there and serenading Sandro Tonali, and so they should as well. You know, that felt like such a special, important moment for the team, for the club, for the players, for the fans as well. And there's a hell of a lot to get through here. I said in the video yesterday I thought Newcastle would win on penalties. I also said Sandro Tonali would play well. Well, he was better than that. He played fantastically well. Now, like I said, there's a lot to talk about, which I'll come to. Joe Willick's injury, the performance in general that wasn't really great, you know, and the significance of extracting victory from tonight in terms of what it means for the mood coming out of the summer. But there's only one place to start, and that is Sandro Tonali. And wow, I thought that was a real masterclass there tonight, a real reminder. At times he was almost playing Nottingham Forest on his own. As I've written in my match report for the Daily Mail tomorrow, well, he played like a gladiator on his debut a year ago, and here tonight on his return, he picked up his sword and his shield. I really thought he was that good, and just a reminder of what he can bring to the team. Listen, a lot of you guys are probably screaming back at it, saying I'm two-faced, you know, that after Sandro Tonali's initial debut last year that I was fairly critical of him. And you say it's criticism, it was just the reality of the situation. I thought after that brilliant, wonderful opening game against Aston Villa, I thought he did come off it. Now, there are a million reasons why that may have been. You know, subsequently what came out, of course, there was a mental burden there. Well, he played as if free from that tonight, and he played like the player we thought he was going to go on to be after that opening game against Aston Villa. There really is just a majesty about him, a machoism as well, the way he struts, the way he carries himself. There's two elements to this. There was the physical side of it, and there was the technical side. The running, you know, I wrote in the bit yesterday the inside story of Sandro Tonali's 10-month out, how, you know, guys on the inside had told me that he was running harder and faster than anybody else. Well, wow, we took that into the game then. There was no finer example of the physicality meeting the technical superiority than the opening goal after 18 seconds. It's Tonali's little cute pass through the lines that sets Almiron clear. He doesn't just stand there and admire it. He gets on his motor and he absolutely charges into the area. And if the ball doesn't fall to Joe Willick, it probably falls to Tonali himself. He married those two, you know, the graft and the craft, as we say, but his passing as well. It was just such a, and I think it stood out because we haven't really seen that from a Newcastle midfielder this season, really, in terms of that quality, in terms of that technical, you know, he's a technician. He's just so wonderful to watch. I've always said this, you can tell why Eddie Howe uses the phrase, which is unusual for Eddie. He fell in love watching him play for AC Milan. He's got the first pass in his head before it comes to him. He plays through the lines whenever he possibly can. He plays forward, and it's always invariably accurate. You know, I just thought I used that word there, masterclass. I really thought in terms of the composure he showed on the ball, it was just head and shoulders above what anybody else offered, married with the fact that he was just running, as I've used that phrase already, he was just running harder and faster than anyone else as well. And I thought he really was brilliant, to the point where after half an hour he actually sat down because he felt a bit sick. Eddie Howe has just told us, and so he should be after 10 months out, he should be exhausted, but he got back up and he went again. And, you know, for an hour until he went off, you know, deservedly to that reception, I thought he was Newcastle's best player by some distance, and really whetted the appetite for what he can bring to a team that needs that, you know, because if we go back and we talk about the performance in general, listen, they had the most wonderful start after 18 seconds in the goal there when Joe Willick, on his first start since April, follows up from the Isak shot. It's rebounded and puts it in. Did Newcastle build on that? No, they didn't. Not at all, really. Willick goes off injured after 15 minutes. I think that did disrupt things a little bit because he was playing well. You know, he looked as if he had energy in his legs. In fact, the point at which he got injured, he was charging back into the box to correct an error by one of his teammates and prevent a Forest shot on goal. Now, the news on that is that Eddie Howe didn't sound hopeful. He called it a big blow with us just now there downstairs, and he said Joe Willick has got a pain in his thigh. Now, thankfully, he's not his Achilles. If it had been his Achilles, I think he would have looked at that and thought, well, why, you know, without sounding too grave, if your Achilles goes for the third time, you're talking, you know, careers in doubt potentially. Thankfully, it's a thigh, even though it doesn't seem like a very good thigh, if that makes sense. So we'll wait and see more news on that at the end of the week. But yes, mood music around that post-match wasn't good. But anyway, back to the performance on the subject of things that weren't good, at least as the first half played out. And going into the second half, to be given that wonderful start, Newcastle then reverted back to what we saw a little bit down at Bournemouth at spells, and even the opening half hour against Southampton. They, apart from Tonali, they lose the ball a lot. You know, Joe Linton, it was bouncing off him at times. Lewis Hall repeatedly, sadly, gave away possession in that left-back position. A couple of times Eddie Howe sort of spun on his heels and put his head in his hands in frustration at Hall. Second balls, you know, they don't win any second balls. Now, with a player like Joe Linton in there, you thought that would have improved. Certainly on the opening weekend against Southampton, he showed that physicality, and you thought he was going to bring that to the team. But, you know, I don't think he has in the last two games. Bruno came on, and Bruno did okay in terms of, you know, on the ball, but did they really stamp their authority on that midfield? Did they really take control Tonali apart? Well, no, they didn't, and they ended up letting Nottingham Forest back into the game, and it really was a bit of a mystery, miracle, whatever you want to call it, how Newcastle got to half-time, you know, with that lead intact. They then come out in the second half, and it doesn't really improve. It just doesn't, and you're looking at them and you're thinking, well, what's the identity here? You know, Eddie Howe's teams, you've always been able to look at them and identify, you know, the patterns of play, the playbook. You can see it unfolding before it actually happens on the pitch. Well, that has ceased a little bit going into this season, and they're mitigating factors. You know, the best players, the likes of Bruno, Guimaraes and Gordon, are coming back after international duty and longer summers. So I do think they'll get there. I do think it'll click. You know, I'm not labelling this a crisis and it's never going to change, but you've got to say it as you see it, and it wasn't good then. It was only when they actually made the changes and Harvey Barnes came to the right, Anthony Gordon came on, Tino Livramento came on. I thought that Newcastle finished the game strongly in the final sort of 15 minutes. And as you would probably expect, Forest made 10 changes here, you know, don't forget. So they were naturally going to tire. I thought, given the 10 changes and the strength of Newcastle's side, given the start they had, they should have been out of sight. I was expecting a fairly easy night for Newcastle after that opening, but as it wasn't, and they've had to call on those reserves, as Eddie's just said to us afterwards there, you know, those reserves, the battling qualities which have seen them through to this point so far this season. But that only goes so far. There comes a point where, you know, that quality has got to take over, and that's why I'm so encouraged by Tonali's return, because I do think he provides that. But anyway, during that final 15 minutes, Newcastle did well. I thought Harvey Barnes was a real threat. He's got two big chances to win it, and Gordon on the left, Barnes on the right. Perhaps it can work, you know. I screamed in the video down at Bournemouth that I think that's the way for Newcastle to go forward, and I would like to see that from the start against Spurs on Sunday, even though Eddie's hinted that he perhaps won't do. He does have certain rules and certain things he sticks to, whereby Jacob Murphy or Miguel Almiron will start on the right, and it'll be one of Barnes or Gordon on the left. So we'll have to wait and see there, but I would like to see that change made. So anyway, it gets them through to the end, and they do look more likely winners as the game closes, and straight to penalties, thankfully, which is far better for deadlines and far better for my prospect of making last orders in the hotel. No extra time. And then, in the goal there behind us, Joe Linton misses his penalty, which again, you know, he wasn't all bad tonight, but if any player stepped up, and I thought he probably is going to miss it. It wasn't a bad penalty, by the way. You know, I think it's a great flying save by the Forest goalkeeper Miguel on his debut. It's probably at a nice enough height, but you just had that sort of feel around Joe Linton. That's 3-1 up in front of the Forest fans, but then they keep the cool. They take good penalties. They show nerve. They show battling qualities in a different way, albeit from a penalty spot. Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes, and then it falls to Sean Longstaff to win it after two shocking Forest penalties, one that hit the bar and the second one that didn't even make the bar. In fact, you know, if we had a little look in the upper tier there, somehow we might find ourselves a match ball. Take that back from our little boys. They would enjoy that. But anyway, Sean Longstaff steps up and, yeah, cool as you like, rolls in at the bottom corner. And this was the question I asked of Eddie afterwards, and he laughed at it because I said, you know, there's a big difference between defeat and victory, to which he sort of said, well, what do you want me to say? You stating the obvious there. I am stating the obvious. I said, can you sort of please talk to my match report? I've sort of kind of made that point, and the point I make, which I'll try to expand on in narrative video form now, is that it was huge. If Newcastle lose that, the feeling coming out of a difficult summer, by Eddie Howe's own admission, with the PSR weekend, with Anthony Gordon, with all the England talk with regards to himself, Amanda and Murdad going, Paul Mitchell, James Bunce coming in, Kieran Trippier. They haven't yet got any, you know, marquee signings over the line. That's still going to drag on the last 24 hours of the window. If they'd lost here tonight, I just think it paints an entirely different picture coming out of the window in terms of the mood, the feel good, the momentum, the confidence, everything else. So to reverse that penalty shootout and get a victory and stay in the Carabao Cup, one of only 3 competitions of course which are in this season, was the point I was making. Do not underestimate the significance of that. I think it is absolutely massive. I really do. So to extract victory from a performance that wasn't great, to put themselves in the next round with, for once, a kind of favourable draw away to League 2 opposition, the FC Wimbledon. I think that's a brilliant tie. I think it's fascinating. I really do. So, yeah, you're leaving here tonight, I think, with a great deal more positivity. But ultimately, the overriding reason for that positivity should be the performance of Sandro Tonali. I just thought it was, yeah, a reminder of what we saw on his debut, a reminder why he arrived here with such pedigree as AC Milan's captain, as an Italy international. He was head and shoulders in terms of everyone on the pitch, Newcastle's players, Forest players, in terms of that quality. Just to watch him and see he sees the passes before the ball, before it gets there, the execution of those passes as well. I thought he was brilliant. I'm just so excited now to see him in the remainder of the season going forward, which takes us on to my merit marks, in which he might feature. 1 star in ascending order. Well, that goes to Tino Livramento. I said down at Bournemouth on Sunday that Kieran Trippier is a better player still than Livramento and should probably be in the team ahead of him. And I do still stand by that. But I thought when Livramento came on, that's the best he's played this season. We actually saw, and I've been a little bit critical of this, I don't think we've seen Livramento's attacking side during the opening 2 games. We did there, and yes, Newcastle were pushing on against a tired team. He's got to prove that against better opposition from the off. I still think Tino, but certainly there, that was the player we saw, particularly in this competition last season. Funny enough, I thought he was good when he came on, and he, as much as anyone, was responsible for that late resurgence. 2 stars, that goes to a player. I've already talked about Harvey Barnes. Yes, that final ball, that finish, that assist, whatever it may be, perhaps was missing, but he was a real threat. I thought he looked fit. I thought he looked lively. He still had power in his body towards the end there when he's chopping and changing and getting himself into positions for those shots. So he is someone I would like to see stay in the team. I've already made that clear. And the 2 stars, well, yeah, that goes to Sandro. Ole. So, yeah, I think that is probably the best place to finish it. I've said as much as I can about him. In the scenes at the end there, they were so important for him, because I think he's spoken this week and he's been so genuine in terms of such a great quote. He said, the love and the support I've had from Newcastle supporters, you would think I'd been here 10 years, not 10 months. And for him to respond coming out tonight, and listen, there's a chance it may be driven, like sounding negative, there's a chance it may be driven by adrenaline, there's a chance there may be a dip like I thought there was after the Aston Villa game last year, but, let's hope not, because there was absolutely a fantastic footballer in there, and one who can make a huge difference in Newcastle's season going forward. So going forward next, it is Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday before signing off for the international break. A huge game. Now, Newcastle traditionally get 3 points against Tottenham at St James's and a handsome victory with it. I don't think it's going to be that straightforward this time, but we'll be speaking to Eddie Howe on Friday up at the training ground ahead of that, which would bring us on to deadline day as well. Now, Eddie was asked about transfers tonight. He said he's got no update. He'll be finding out more when he leaves the stadium. Now, my information is, again, I was asked about this last night on X and on television. I do think Mark Guy still will happen. Palace were waiting to get the centre-half in. I think there's been movement today on that in terms of the agreed price. Once that happens, I do expect Guy to arrive here, not here, but, at Newcastle United. So, yeah, guys, still plenty to play out over the next 48 hours. So thank you again so much for watching. Please tell me what you thought of Sandro Tonali below the line. Comment, like, subscribe. There's a thanks button now as well. And I'll see you again. I'll try to get through as many comments as possible. I'll see you again in a couple of days' time. A little scan of this place before we go. Okay, take care, guys. Bye-bye.